At 2:07 a.m., with the wind from Lake Michigan slamming against 52 floors of glass, Elena Hawthorne was still standing in her office. The city beneath her was a map of sodium yellow and LCD green, highways glowing like slow veins in the freezing January night. Hawthorne Tech's headquarters rose above it all, a tower of steel and glass that the business magazines had once called a cathedral of innovation. From here, Elena could see the river, the rail yards, the distant glow of neighborhoods she only passed over in helicopter briefings. On her desk lay a folder with a painfully banal title, Canteen Inventory Discrepancies, 28 Days Report. The numbers inside looked small. That was what made them dangerous. 231. That was the total count, circled in red ballpoint by the CFO. 231 meals missing from the staff canteen in less than a month. No discount entries, no charity program, no documented write-offs. The stock left the refrigerators and never showed up in the system again. Couldn't it just be employees sneaking extra food? Elena had asked at 10 p.m., when the tower had mostly emptied out and only the cleaning crews and servers were still awake. Her CFO, Carl Benson, square shoulders, smooth voice, a man who treated numbers like scripture, had shaken his head. Impossible, he'd said, sliding a laptop across her desk. Cameras show the same person every time, same time window, between 1:20 and 1:40 a.m., same bag, same exit. He'd pressed play. A black and white feed from the canteen appeared. A man in a faded gray uniform pushed a mop cart into the frame. He checked the room, disappeared into the back, then re-emerged carrying a large paper bag cradled in one arm, pushing the cart with the other. No hurry, no visible fear. "Who is he?" Elena had asked. Carl tapped the keyboard. "Marcus Reed," he said. "Night janitor. 2 years on staff. No disciplinary record. No complaints. Lives. Somewhere off our books. The form just says, private rental." On the last printed page, a handwritten note was scrawled in blue ink. Given pattern and volume. Strong suspicion of internal theft. Recommend immediate disciplinary action. K. Immediate disciplinary action. They always started that way. A note, a recommendation, a signature. One sentence to evaporate a human being from the system. Now, hours later, the tower was quieter than a church. Elena stood at the window, the report in her hand, her reflection hovering over the city. A woman in her late 30s, dark hair twisted into a knot, makeup half faded, gray suit jacket still on. Behind her eyes, another voice spoke, one she used to hear over dinner when she was a child. "You want to lead? You don't let leaks slide. Mercy is how systems rot. You cut where you must. People are line items, Ellie. Don't romanticize them." Her father's voice. He'd been dead for 4 years, but his tone still lived in the marble and glass of this place. Elena looked down at the lot behind the building. Somewhere below, in the service corridors and basement floors, the janitors were finishing their rounds. In less than half an hour, if the report was right, one of them would take another bag of food out of the canteen and vanish into the dark. The responsible thing, the safe thing, would be to forward this to HR and legal, copy Carl, instruct them to handle per policy. There was a template for this. There was always a template. Instead, she found herself saying, out loud, into the empty office, "I want to see it." The words surprised her. She set the report flat on the desk, slipped off her heels, and pulled on the black boots she kept under the credenza for fire drills and late-night server checks. Over her blouse, she shrugged into a long charcoal coat, zipping it high. She twisted her hair into a rough knot with a rubber band, not caring if it looked uneven. In the glass, her reflection looked less like a CEO and more like a woman going outside to take out the trash. She almost laughed at the thought. almost turned back. Instead, she picked up her security badge, turned off the lights, and headed for the private elevator. When the doors slid shut, 52 floors of polished authority vanished behind her. The cabin hummed as it descended. For the first time in years, Elena realized she had no prepared script for what she was walking into. The third-floor canteen was dark, except for the bluish wash of emergency lights. The big coffee machines sat silent, stainless steel counters wiped down, chairs turned upside down on tables like a forest of legs. Elena swiped her badge at the side staff entrance, slipping into the kitchen. The air smelled of garlic, frying oil, detergent, and metal. A wall clock ticked above the door. 2:11 a.m. She retreated to a corner behind a tall cabinet that held trays and paper goods, from where she could see only a slice of the canteen floor. Her heart thudded harder than it had in any earnings call. Wheels rattled in the corridor. A mop bucket rolled past the doorway, followed by a man's silhouette. Marcus Reed. In person, he seemed at once taller and more worn than in the footage. He wore the standard gray jumpsuit, its color bleached near white at the seams, the Hawthorne logo ghosted on his chest from too many washes. His hair was cut short, more for convenience than style. He pushed the cart in, parked it, and scanned the room with that habit of people who work nights, ensuring they were truly alone. Elena's fingers tightened around the edge of the cabinet, unseen. Marcus walked into the back storeroom. Through a narrow gap, she watched him unlock the steel fridge, its motor a constant low hum, and move among the shelves. He didn't grab randomly. He checked labels. Expiration dates, color, everything due to expire in the next 24 hours, meals that would be thrown out at 7 in the morning. He slid onto a trolley. Rice, pasta, protein trays, soup containers. He worked quietly, efficiently, almost like someone fulfilling an order. When the trolley was full, he transferred each tray into a large brown paper bag, layering them carefully so nothing crushed, then knotted the top twice. He lifted the bag, heavy enough to strain his arm slightly, took the mop cart handle with his free hand, and headed toward the rear door. He didn't look around this time. He looked like a man moving through a ritual so familiar he no longer expected to be caught. Elena waited until the door's latch clicked, then followed. The moment she stepped outside, the cold hit like a slap. The loading dock stretched out in concrete and shadow. Dumpsters hunched along the wall. Snow, pushed aside by earlier plows, had frozen into dirty ridges. A thin layer of ice glazed the asphalt, glinting under the single security lamp. Marcus moved down the ramp, pushing the cart one-handed, the paper bag cradled to his chest. Elena kept her distance, staying in the strip of darkness beside the building. Her breath puffed white and loud to her own ears. At the far end of the lot, a section of chain-link fence had been cut just enough to allow a person through. Marcus slipped into the gap. Elena followed, snagging her coat on the wire before freeing herself with a muted curse. They emerged into a narrower side street where the city's sheen wore off quickly. The tower's glass edge loomed behind them like a watchful blade. Ahead, brick walls sagged under graffiti and ice. Marcus walked without hesitation, boots crunching over gritty snow. The first stop was barely 2 blocks away. An old woman lay curled in a recessed doorway under a broken awning, her back pressed to brick, a gray blanket pulled up to her thin shoulders. Her hair was stained the yellow-white of age, skin mottled and raw from wind. A grocery cart with a few plastic bags sat nearby, filled with bottles and weathered clothes. Marcus left the cart by the curb, lifted out one tray from the bag, and knelt. "Miss Mary," he said softly. "It's me." Her eyes opened slowly, unfocusing, then sharpening. "Marcus," she rasped, voice like paper. "I thought the snow took you." "Not yet," he said, prying the lid off the container. Steam escaped in a white cloud. Got chicken tonight. And real bread, not crusts. You need to drink, too. He placed a small bottle of water beside her, then slid the meal into hands that shook too much to hold it steadily. He steadied the tray until her fingers closed around it. You'll get in trouble, she muttered around a cough, but she was already lifting the fork. I already am in trouble, he replied lightly. Figured I might as well earn it. From the shadow of a parked truck, Elena watched, unable to move. No cameras, no audience, no brand logo, just a man giving away food that her company would write down as waste. Your boy worked at Hawthorne, didn't he? Marcus asked quietly. Miss Mary swallowed, eyes filling for a second. Security, she said. He was proud of that uniform. Until the layoffs. One day they said cost optimization. Next day, he's home with a box. Then the diabetes, the hospital, the bills. Her hand trembled so hard, soup sloshed. You know the rest. Elena looked at the worn fabric of Mary's coat and thought of a slide she'd once presented to the board. Security vendor consolidation, annual savings, 4.7 M. She had been proud of that number. Marcus adjusted Mary's blanket, tucking it higher around her neck. You're not trash, he said. Don't let this place convince you otherwise. Then he stood, retrieved the cart, and moved on. Elena followed, her lungs burning with cold and something else. The second stop was under the cracked neon sign of an old laundromat. A man sat slumped against the wall next to a shopping cart filled with cans. His coat was a faded blue, familiar in a way that made Elena's stomach knot. The old Hawthorne Tech security jacket, logo barely visible, white thread poking through at the seams. Marcus crouched in front of him. Hey, Gary, he said. The man jerked awake, blinking. His breath smelled of exhaustion and cheap alcohol. Marcus, he croaked. You're late. Thought Hawthorne finally caught you. Maybe they did, Marcus said. We'll see tomorrow. He pulled out a tray, opened it, and handed it over. Gary inhaled like someone remembering what warmth tasted like. I stood at your doors for 12 years, Gary muttered, between bites. Every night. Wind, rain, snow. Thank you for your service, they said, when they cut me. Then nothing. He looked at the tray, then at Marcus. If it weren't for you, I'd have been gone last winter. Marcus didn't answer that. He pulled a plastic-wrapped pair of gloves from his pocket. These were on clearance, he said. They're not fancy, but they're warmer than what you've got. Gary stared at them as if they were made of gold. Elena's fingers itched to do something, anything, but they stayed clenched in her pockets. Her system had congratulated itself on efficient outsourcing. Gary had quietly fallen off the edge. Marcus moved on. Under the concrete ribs of an overpass, a small group of younger men and women huddled around a cluster of half-dead candles. Their backpacks were arranged like a wall. As Marcus approached, heads lifted. Food run, one of them called, voice cracking with relief. Saved your asses again, another said, grinning, but the gratitude was deeper than the joke. Marcus set the bag down and began handing out containers, bottles, a few bruised apples. One boy, no more than 20, with curly hair and haunted eyes, took his tray with shaking hands. I had an interview with Hawthorne last year, he said bitterly. Tech support. They liked me. Told me to wait for HR. Then silence. After 3 months, they emailed, we chose another candidate. He shrugged. Hard to keep trying when your stomach is empty. We'll get you there, Marcus said. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. at the Bridge Cafe. Bring your old resume. I'll show you how to make them read it. Under the bridge, Elena watched them like ghosts in a world she'd never been forced to see. At last, When the bag was almost empty and the frost groaned under her boots, she stepped forward. "That's enough," she said. Her voice cracked the air like a twig. The small circle went still. Marcus turned, eyes narrowing as he recognized her in the failing light. "Ms. Hawthorne," he said slowly. His tone carried exhaustion, suspicion, and something like resignation. "You followed me." Elena stepped into the weak glow of the candles. "I needed to know what you were doing," she said, "with the missing food." She looked at the people around him. They looked back with a mix of fear and dull defiance. To them, she was just another suit, even out of uniform. "Well," Marcus said, gesturing around, "this is it. The great canteen robbery." He pointed to the old woman's guarded doorway, to Gary's shopping cart, to the kids with their backpacks. "These are your stolen assets," he said. "Once employees, once applicants, once names on your payroll. Now, line items in nobody's ledger." Elena opened her mouth. The practiced phrases rose automatically. "The market forced our hand. We're doing the best we can." They tasted sour. "You know this is against policy," she managed. "You know that, don't you?" "Of course I know," Marcus said. "I signed that acknowledgement when I took the job you threw at the bottom of your ladder." He stepped closer, eyes dark but steady. "But tell me something," he said. "When you sign the papers that kick people out of your perfect tower, do you imagine any of this? Or do you just see a number shrink on your cost sheet and call it a win?" Wind hissed through the overpass. Somewhere above, a truck rattled by. The city's cold seeped into Elena's bones. "I signed to keep the company alive," she said quietly, "to protect 10,000 other jobs." "And I take what your company throws away," Marcus replied, "to keep the people you erased from dying any faster." He held her gaze. "So now you've seen it. Tomorrow you'll sit at your desk. You'll have a choice. You can sign another form and wipe me off your records too. Or you can admit that what you call the system working looks a whole lot like this from down here." He gestured at the concrete, the cold, the lives arranged along the edges. "I won't beg," he said. "I've done enough of that. Do what you're going to do." Somewhere behind him, the curly-haired boy whispered, "Marcus, don't." But Marcus lifted a hand, silencing him. Elena had closed hundreds of deals, stared down major investors, negotiated hostile partners into handshakes. She had never felt as exposed as she did under that concrete. For the first time in years, she didn't answer. She turned, walked back toward the tower, boots slipping on frozen pavement, Marcus's words following like a shadow. "Tomorrow you'll sign." The morning shift at Hawthorne Tech began as if the night had never happened. Barista machines hissed. Elevators dinged. Keycards beeped. Faces, pale in winter light, filed through the revolving doors. The lobby's automated voice welcomed the day's visitors, oblivious. Elena hadn't slept. She showered, dressed, and arrived at her office before 6. The report still lay on her desk. Her inbox had multiplied overnight. Finance reminders, legal alerts, calendar invites. A new email from HR sat at the top. Subject, disciplinary recommendation. Marcus Reed. Attached, CCTV stills. Policy citations, proposed termination letter. She opened it. The draft letter was crisp and efficient. Dear Mr. Reed, after a thorough investigation, Hawthorne Tech has concluded that you have violated company policy by misappropriating company property. Effective immediately. Elena stared at the blinking cursor at the signature line, where her name was supposed to appear. Her father's voice echoed again. Mercy is how systems rot. Marcus's voice followed, quieter but sharper. If I don't start, who will? A knock at her door broke the loop. "Come in," she said. Carl stepped in, hair perfect, tie straight. "HR's ready for your sign-off," he said. "I've seen the footage. It's textbook. If we don't act, we're signaling we tolerate theft." He spoke like a man completely certain he was protecting the company. "Set up a meeting," Elena said. "Me, Marcus, HR, legal, before I sign anything." Carl blinked. "That's unusual," he said carefully. "Do you think that's necessary?" "Yes," Elena replied. "I won't sign off on someone's life without hearing their side." Carl hesitated a fraction of a second, then nodded. "I'll have HR book a room," he said. As the door closed behind him, Elena realized how strange that sounded in this building. Hearing their side. They heard executives. They heard consultants. They almost never heard janitors. Maybe that was the problem. Room 2003 looked like every mid-level conference room in the tower. Neutral gray walls, a pale wood table, a screen mounted on one wall, a bowl of untouched mints in the center. Marcus sat in one chair, jumpsuit clean but frayed at the cuffs, hands folded on his knees. On one side sat Amrita Rao, head of HR, her notebook open, pen poised. On Marcus's other side sat Daniel Klein, general counsel, his tie in the same wine-red shade as every other day, a stack of printed policies in front of him. Elena entered last. "Thank you for coming," she said, to no one in particular. No one answered. She took her seat opposite Marcus. He looked tired. More tired than he had seemed under the bridge. In the harsh office light, the lines around his eyes were deeper, the gray in his hair more visible. "Mr. Reed," Daniel began, professional. "We're here to discuss serious violations of company policy. As you know, you have the right to—" "Spare him the script," Elena cut in. "He knows why he's here." She turned to Marcus. "You know we have footage," she said. "You don't deny taking food." "No," Marcus replied. "I took it." "Do you understand that under policy—" Daniel started again. "Yes," Marcus interrupted. "I understand your policy better than you think. I used to write engineering specs here. Rules are rules until they stop someone important from making money. Then they become guidelines. Food, apparently, never reaches that level." Amrita's pen froze mid-word. Elena inhaled slowly. "I followed you last night," she said. "I saw where the food goes." Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Surprise. Then something like relief. If she'd seen it, at least she wasn't judging blind. "So," he said, voice rough, "you've seen the leak." He glanced at Amrita and Daniel. "Have they?" he asked. "Or are they just going to look at me through whatever lines are printed on those forms?" "We have your statement from security," Amrita said carefully. "You claimed you donated excess food, but intention doesn't change the fact—" "Tell them," Elena said softly, cutting her off. "Not the HR version. The real one." Silence settled in. Marcus looked down at his hands, then up. "My name is Marcus Reed," he said. "I'm 38. I used to sit on the 18th floor. Thermal systems team. You probably don't remember. We were the ones who made sure your server floors didn't cook themselves to death." Daniel frowned. "That doesn't appear in your current file," he said. "Of course it doesn't," Marcus replied. "You scrub people when you dump them. You call it data retention policy. I call it amnesia." He talked. He told them about his first day at Hawthorne Tech, the way he'd stared at the lobby like it was a cathedral, a kid from the South Side finally entering a place his mother used to clean. He told them about long nights with his team, patching systems so the company could boast 99.9999% uptime. He told them about the day the floor's manager had gathered them and used the word restructuring. How everything after that sounded like the adult voices in a cartoon, wah wah wah, until he'd found himself carrying a cardboard box down the stairs because he couldn't bear to ride the elevator out as cargo. He told them about his wife, Leah, the crushing bills, the nights he'd lied awake listening to their daughter, Lily, breathing in the next room, counting the days until rent was due. "How does that justify taking food?" Daniel asked, not unkindly. "It doesn't," Marcus said. "It explains why I came back." He described the job hunt. The doors closed politely, then not so politely. The unemployment line. The day Leah left. A note on the table. "I won't watch you drown." How he'd stood in the empty kitchen, holding Lily's small pink cup, and realized he was on his own. Then one day, he said, I saw a posting online. Evening cleaning crew, Hawthorne Tech. No heavy background checks, just reliable, no record. I knew your systems, knew your codes. I could get in. He looked at Elena. "I didn't come back because I love scrubbing toilets," he said. "I came back because your building stays warm at night, because your canteen throws out enough food to feed a small village, because I needed a keycard again, not to the 18th floor, to the trash." He told them about Miss Mary, about Gary in his old uniform, about the boys under the overpass. Amrita's notepad stayed blank. "I asked the canteen once," Marcus said, "if they'd sign off on donating. They said legal said no, liability, regulation, easier to throw it out. I watched a woman scoop 20 untouched trays into a bin while a man I recognized from your warehouse staggered outside, hungry." He smiled then, but it was a tired, dangerous smile. "So I broke your rule," he said. "I started taking what was headed for the trash and giving it to people your optimization slides never mention." Daniel cleared his throat. "Whatever the emotional context," he said quietly, "company property is still company property. If this gets out, it exposes us to—" "To what?" Marcus asked. "To the accusation that someone here cared?" His gaze shifted to Elena. "You already made up your mind," he said. "Last night under the bridge. Today is just the paperwork." Elena thought of the draft termination letter waiting for her signature. "My mind was made up for years," she said. "Last night is the first time it came undone." She turned to Daniel and Amrita. "Legally, we can terminate him," she said. "We can call the police if we want. We can protect the company and pretend the story ends there." She looked back at Marcus. "Or," she continued, "we can admit that a man breaking a policy to feed people we pushed into the cold is not the biggest threat to Hawthorne Tech's soul. The biggest threat is that we built a system where what he did is the only way anyone gets help." Daniel stared at her. "Are you suggesting we ignore this?" he asked slowly. "No," Elena said. "I'm suggesting we learn from it and build around it, not as a charity stunt. As a structural correction." She pushed aside the termination letter and dropped a different document on the table. A few printed slides she'd drafted between dawn and the meeting. At the top of the first page, in all caps, "Bridge back, draft concept." Amrita leaned in. "What is this?" she asked. "A program," Elena said. "One that takes what Marcus has been doing alone and makes it official. Controlled, transparent, a bridge back into the world for the people we've thrown out. It starts with food. It ends, I don't know yet, but it's more than nothing." She looked at Marcus. "And I want you to design it with me." The room went still. "You're serious?" Marcus asked. "Yes," Elena said. Daniel let out a breath. "Elena, this is unconventional," he said. You're proposing that we reward an employee for violating policy, then elevate him to some quasi-leadership role? The board will ask if you've lost your mind. They've asked that before, Elena replied. I'm still here. She faced Marcus. You don't owe me anything, she said. I signed off on the restructuring that cut you. Whether I knew your name or not, I was part of what put you under that bridge. I can't fix that, but I can choose what we do next. Her voice softened. You can walk out of this room, continue as you are, hope no one notices. Or you can help me. Help us take responsibility for the damage we've done. I can't promise the board will like it. I can't even promise I'll keep my job. But I can promise that if we fight, I'll be standing next to you, not across the table. Marcus sat very still. A janitor, a former engineer, a single father who had built a small, fragile network of survival in the shadows of a system that forgot him. He thought of Lily asleep in their tiny apartment, one hand curled around her stuffed bear. He thought of Miss Mary's paper-thin wrists, Gary's laugh, the boys under the bridge, the guard who'd nodded at him this morning a little too long, as if wondering if Marcus would still be there tomorrow. If I say no, he asked quietly. Then I'll still fight to change how we treat this, Elena said. But I'll be doing it with one less person who knows the truth. He exhaled slowly. I don't trust your system, he said. I don't trust your board. I don't trust your policies. I barely trust you. You're the one who signed the papers that killed my old job. But last night, you stood under that bridge instead of driving past with your tinted windows. He met her eyes. I'll try, he said. Not for you. For them. Something in Elena's chest shifted, sharp and painful and necessary. That's enough, she said. Then she took the termination letter between two fingers, tore it down the middle, then in half again, until the words fragmented into confetti on the table. Daniel stared. That's symbolic, he said. But the board won't like... I'll tell the board myself, Elena said. And if they want my head, they can have it. But they'll have to look at what we did first. The board meeting that afternoon felt different from any Elena could remember. Usually these gatherings were choreography, polished slides, polite questions, veiled threats wrapped in smiles. Today, tensions sat in the air like static. The long mahogany table gleamed under soft lights. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city stretched out, indifferent. At the head of the table sat Franklin Cole, chairman of the board, her late father's oldest ally. His hair was white now, but his gaze had the same shark-bright sharpness as when she was 12, and he'd made her practice mental math over dessert. Around him sat 8 other directors, each with a printed copy of Elena's bridge-back proposal in front of them. Elena, Franklin began, not bothering to hide his displeasure, you've called an emergency session on a quarter-close week to discuss this? He tapped the folder as if it offended him. Yes, she said. She didn't bring graphs about customer engagement or 5-year growth. Instead, she'd printed photographs, each slipped into a plastic sleeve. My team has flagged rising concern about our recent cost-cutting, she said. Retention issues. Reputational risk. We've talked about it in the abstract. Today, we talk about it in concrete. She slid the first photo onto the table and pushed it toward Franklin. Miss Mary, blanket around her, tray in hand, eyes hollow. This is the mother of a former warehouse worker, Elena said. He died last year after losing his job and his health coverage during our logistics optimization. She sleeps 3 blocks from our world-class headquarters. She placed the second photo. Gary, clutching his shopping cart under the dead laundromat sign. This is Gary. He wore our logo on his chest for 12 years. When we outsourced security, he became a cost line we removed. He now eats out of our trash, courtesy of our night staff. Third photo. The boys under the overpass, lit by candlelight. These are the applicants we never called. The trainees we let go, the lives crushed under our efficiency. Some board members shifted uncomfortably. Others didn't look at the images at all, the way one avoids staring into the sun. This is emotional blackmail, Franklin said. We can find sad stories in any big company. We're not a social service agency. Our duty is to shareholders. Our duty is to shareholders, yes, Elena said. But if we turn ourselves into a machine that chews up people and spits them out for an extra 2 cents of margin, eventually our shareholders will be left with a shell. People are not spare parts. She clicked a small remote. The wall screen lit up with a slide. Bridgeback. Proposed initiative. Collect all excess cafeteria food into safe channels for distribution to affected ex-employees and local shelters. Create a Bridgeback Center on the 12th floor. Help for former staff. Job counseling, retraining, emergency stipends. Partnerships with vetted shelters and agencies. Funded by redirecting 0.3% of existing CSR and marketing spend. No net budget increase. Program co-designed by HR, Legal, Operations, Marcus Reed. Night Janitor, Ex-Thermal Systems Engineer, Layoff Cohort 18F. The last line made the room murmur. A janitor? One director said. Are we in a movie now? What's next? A security guard running our data division? He used to be an engineer here, Elena said. We cut him. He came back under a mop because it was the only role we'd give him. He's been doing our work in the shadows, feeding the people we abandoned. If we're going to fix the leak between our glass tower and the street, we need someone who's walked that path. This is madness, Franklin said. If you want to do charity, write a check. Take a photo with a giant donation. We don't build a whole structure around one rogue employee. One rogue employee, Elena repeated. The only person who looked twice at the people we left outside. The only one who thought to ask if the food we're dumping might keep someone alive another night. She looked around the table. You told me to find the leak, she said. I found it. It's not just in inventory. It's in our humanity. One of the younger board members, Maya Ortiz, who represented a large pension fund, leaned forward. Elena, she said, I've been pushing for meaningful ESG, not glossy annual reports. On paper, this is risky, but it's also real. Our younger beneficiaries, our future talent pool, they pay attention to things like this. A program like Bridgeback, if it's authentic, could reframe who we are. Another director, the one with the careworn face and deep lines around his eyes, cleared his throat. My son spiraled after a layoff, he said quietly. Not here. Different industry. But we just sent him away with a severance package and a pat on the back. It nearly killed him. If the firm had had something like this, maybe it would have been different. I'm listening. Franklin's jaw tightened. You're sentimental, he said. We can't run on sentiment. There are legal liabilities, costs. Next thing you know, we'll be a haven for every disgruntled ex-employee looking for a free lunch. Elena nodded. Let's talk costs, she said. We spend millions every year on branding campaigns that try to convince the world we care. We sponsor conferences, slap our logo on charity runs, publish glossy ESG brochures, all surface. Almost none of it touches the people broken by our decisions. She glanced out the window at the city that had hosted their rise. Bridgeback will cost us money, she said. It will cost time. It will force us to see faces instead of numbers. But I'd rather spend 0.5% of our budget on something that actually changes lives than 10 times that on ads about how good we are. She met Franklin's eyes. If we choose not to, she said, then be honest. Tell investors we maximize shareholder value by washing our hands of everyone we hurt. Own it. Put it in the report. Don't hide behind slogans. A heavy silence. You're staking your position on this, Franklin said. Yes, Elena answered. Maya exhaled. I support the pilot, she said. 1 year. Audited like everything else. If it's just fluff, I'll be the first to kill it. But if it works, we might actually be ahead of the curve instead of chasing lawsuits and public outrage. One by one, the other board members weighed in. Some were wary. Some were openly hostile. Some, to Elena's mild shock, nodded. At last, Franklin pinched the bridge of his nose. Fine, he said. 1 year trial, fixed budget. No expansion without further approval. And no martyr theatrics, Elena. If numbers start slipping, we reevaluate. Agreed, Elena said. On one condition. He glared. What now? We're transparent, she said. Internally. Externally. No spinning. No hiding Marcus in the basement. We tell the story as it is. Franklin grimaced. You're going to make my life hell with investors, he muttered. For once, Elena said, I'm okay with that. The Bridgeback Center opened 6 weeks later in a repurposed section of the 12th floor that used to host management training seminars. The carpet was new. The desks were second-hand but polished. A coffee machine hummed in the corner. Posters covered the walls, some printed, some drawn by kids of former staff. Houses with warm windows, little figures holding hands, a stick figure with "Thank you" in shaky letters. The sign outside the glass doors read, in the same corporate font as every department, Bridgeback, Transition and Support. But the people who walked in didn't feel like a demographic. They felt like bruises. Former warehouse workers with knees gone bad. Line managers whose jobs had been automated. Programmers burned out by relentless deadlines and then cut in rebalancing. Night guards with hollow eyes and better memories of the building than half the executives. Marcus split his time now. Half his hours were still spent with a mop and a cart, down in the basement and empty floors, because the janitorial staff was already understaffed, and he refused to dump his load onto others. The other half he spent here, at a simple desk near the entrance, his name on a printed tag, Marcus Reed, peer counselor, ex-employee. He hated the title, the parentheses. But he took the seat anyway. On the first day, few people came. On the second, a trickle. By the end of the second week, appointments were booked out. One morning, a woman in her 50s came in, clutching a folder so tightly the cardstock bent. Ms. Carla Nguyen? The receptionist asked. Carla nodded, her mouth set in a line. Marcus stepped forward. I'm Marcus, he said. You want to come in? She followed him to a small room with 2 chairs and a cheap fern. I used to work here, she said before he could ask. Accounts receivable, 15 years. Then the new software came. They said they didn't need manual entry anymore. I trained my replacement, a program. They gave me 4 weeks' pay, a handshake, and an email address for a transition partner. Her laugh was bitter. The partner sent me 3 links to job sites and wished me luck. She laid papers on the table, overdue notices, medical bills, her eviction warning. I'm not asking for charity, she said. I just want to know if there's any way back. Anywhere. Marcus listened. He'd learned that step was harder than triaging. First, he said, we're going to get you a hot meal and not from a trash pile. She flinched, then gave him a wary chuckle. Then, he continued, we'll look at skills, training. If we can't place you here, we tap our partner companies. Somewhere in this city, someone still needs a human being who can see patterns software can't. Carla's eyes glistened. You really think so? She asked. I have to, Marcus said. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here. Not everyone loved Bridgeback. Some middle managers sneered behind closed doors. So now we're... what? One complained at a lunch table. A rehab center for people who weren't good enough? Careful, his colleague said. HR will write you up if you talk like that. Others were subtler. The PR team descended on the center like a flock of birds, cameras and bullet points in hand. We can frame this as a bold new chapter, one young strategist said, eyes bright. Shots of the CEO shaking hands with grateful ex-employees. Maybe close with a shot of the skyline. Voiceover about no one left behind. Marcus watched from the doorway, jaw clenched. He cornered Elena later that day. You turn this into a commercial, he said, and everything dies. They'll never come back. They'll never trust us. Elena sighed. I told them no filming without explicit consent, she said. Limited internal comms. And if anyone tries to stage a fake scene, I'll shut it down myself. He studied her face. You're fighting your own machine, he said. Every day, she replied. He nodded once. Then I'll fight with you, he said. Until it eats us both. The first real test didn't come from investors or the board. It came from winter. Chicago's February hit like a slab of ice. Temperatures plunged below zero. Shelters overflowed. The city opened emergency warming centers. News alerts flashed about frostbite, hypothermia, exposure deaths. One night, just after midnight, the receptionist called the Bridgeback emergency line. Elena was still at her desk, numbers swimming in front of her eyes. Marcus was finishing his last floor. Ms. Hawthorne, the receptionist said, voice thin with panic. There's someone in the lobby, an ex-employee. He's not well. By the time Elena reached the lobby, Marcus was already there, his cart abandoned near the glass doors. A man lay half-collapsed on one of the benches, skin blue-tinged, breath shallow. His jacket was too thin. A cardboard sign leaned against his leg. Former Hawthorne Tech. Will work. Thomas, Marcus said, kneeling, hands hovering. He was with shipping and receiving, got cut last summer. Security hovered nearby, unsure whether to call the police or an ambulance. We were supposed to meet him last week, Marcus said, guilt tightening his voice. He missed the appointment. I didn't follow up. Elena felt the script rising in the security supervisor's voice. Ma'am, he's trespassing, he began. We're not equipped for... Call an ambulance, Elena snapped. Now, and get blankets. Any we have. The supervisor hesitated. Our policy... Policy consumee, she said. Move. Something in her tone broke his resistance. Paramedics arrived within minutes, wheeling Thomas out on a stretcher. Marcus rode in the ambulance, leaving his mop and badge behind. Elena stayed, watching the doors close with a cold she hadn't felt on her skin. The next day, a photo went around internal channels. Marcus sitting beside Thomas's hospital bed, holding his hand. Someone had taken it on a phone and posted it to a private employee group. The caption read, They say we're a family until we're not. Last night, at least one person proved it isn't a lie for everyone. Comments exploded. Some were cynical, some were raw, but many were simple. This is what I want our company to be. Elena saw it too. For once, she didn't try to control it. The backlash came 3 weeks later. An anonymous email landed in several inboxes, including Franklin's and a few senior managers, then leaked to a business blog. Sources inside Hawthorne Tech say CEO Elena Hawthorne has turned company HQ into a soup kitchen for people who couldn't cut it, misusing corporate resources for her pet Bridgeback project, led by a janitor who has been caught stealing food for months. The article that followed was worse. The headline, "Is Hawthorne Tech's compassion just a cover for chaos?" It rattled shareholders. It infuriated Franklin. He called another board meeting. "Elena," he said, waving a printout of the article like a charge sheet, "you've turned our internal leniency into a PR nightmare. Investors are calling. They want numbers, not sob stories." "Then give them the numbers," Elena said, sliding a slim folder onto the table. Quarter-to-date attrition among high performers, down 3% in departments that know about Bridgeback. Engagement scores, slightly up. Early data on our retraining program, 2 rehires, 5 placements at partner firms, 12 people who would otherwise be homeless now in stable housing. She met their eyes. "That's the ROI," she said. "You want dollar figures? Ask legal how much a single class action costs, or a viral video of one of our ex-employees freezing to death on our doorstep." Franklin's mouth tightened. "Spare us the theatrics," he said. "The question is simple. Does Bridgeback stay, or do we shut it down before it becomes a bigger liability?" Maya spoke up. "The question is also, what message do we send to our current staff?" she said. "Kill this now, after one hit piece, and everyone knows our ethics crumble at the first sign of trouble." Another board member, the one whose son had struggled after a layoff, nodded. "I visited the center," he said quietly, unannounced. "Talked to people there. I'm not ready to shut it down." Franklin glared at Elena. "You've split this board," he said, "for the sake of a janitor and your guilty conscience." Elena swallowed. "Then let's put it in simpler terms," she said. "If you vote to kill Bridgeback today, I'll step out there and tell the company why. And if you want a new CEO who can live with that, find one who can say it without choking." The air thinned. "That's blackmail," Franklin said. "No," Elena said. "It's honesty. I won't be the face on your brochure if it has to smile over this." The vote was closer this time. Ugly, drawn out. Voices raised, tempers frayed. In the end, Bridgeback survived. Barely. So did Elena's job. But something fundamental had shifted. The system had been forced to look at itself in a mirror held by a janitor, and it had blinked. The months that followed were quieter on the surface, but under the glass, the rearrangement continued. Bridgeback expanded bit by tiny bit inside its tight budget, less like a marketing campaign and more like a small, stubborn organ regrowing inside a half-mechanical body. Marcus built a network of ex-employees, former HR staff, old engineers, warehouse leads, who volunteered hours off the books to mentor, review resumes, make phone calls. Carla found a role at a mid-sized logistics firm that still valued humans who could catch anomalies software missed. She sent Marcus an email with 3 lines. "First paycheck arrived. Not huge. Feels huge. Thank you." Gary moved into a small shared room through a partner charity. He still struggled. Some nights he still slipped. But he wasn't sleeping under the laundromat sign anymore. The curly-haired boy under the overpass, Jamal, landed an apprenticeship at a local IT shop. He sent a selfie from his first day at a desk, eyes shining. Bridgeback kept a quiet wall of Polaroids, each with a date and a scribbled note. Elena found herself drawn there on bad days. "This wall is dangerous," she told Marcus once, half joking. "Why?" he asked. "Because it makes me think the job isn't just numbers," she said. He snorted. "It never was," he replied. "You just lived high enough up that you couldn't hear the people under the wheels." Sometimes they argued about rules, about who got help first, about how much they could promise without lying. "You can't save everyone," she told him after a particularly brutal case, a former team lead lost in addiction, who disappeared again after one meeting. "I know," he said, voice hoarse, "but I can't stop trying to save anyone just because I can't save everyone." She thought of nights she'd told herself a version of the opposite. "I used to believe I wasn't responsible," she said. "Now I don't know where responsibility stops." "Maybe it doesn't," he said. "Maybe the point is to carry it anyway." One Saturday, months after the first night under the bridge, Elena stood outside a low building on the edge of a rougher neighborhood. The sign over the door was new, the paint smell still fresh. Bridge Back House, Community Hub, in partnership with Hawthorne Tech. Children's voices drifted from inside. Laughter, a clatter of dishes. She stepped in. The space was nothing like Hawthorne's glass lobby. Second-hand couches, bookshelves, a whiteboard with job postings, a row of computers against one wall, a small kitchen where volunteers were stirring a large pot of something fragrant. In the corner, under a hand-painted mural of a bridge over a river, a girl sat at a table, tongue between her teeth, pencil flying across paper. "Lily," Marcus called softly. The girl looked up, brown eyes sharp, hair in a messy bun. She couldn't have been more than 10. "This is Ms. Hawthorne," he said. "The lady who signs too many forms for a living." Elena winced, but Lily giggled. "My dad talks about you," Lily said, fearless in the way kids have before the world teaches them caution. "He says you used to be a robot." "Did he now?" Elena said slowly. "He says you had a glass heart," Lily continued. "But then you walked under a bridge and it cracked." Elena looked at Marcus. He shrugged, unrepentant. "Kids deserve the truth," he said. Lily tilted her head. "Did it hurt?" she asked. "Yes," Elena said. "It still does. But I think it's better now." Lily nodded with the solemnity of a child processing something big. "Good," she said. "Because Dad used to be very sad. Now he's tired, but not sad all the time." Marcus rolled his eyes, embarrassed. Elena's throat tightened. Someone called Lily over for lunch. She ran off, braids swinging. Elena and Marcus stepped outside into air that smelled faintly of rain. "It's not enough," Elena said, looking down the street. A man slept on a bench. A siren wailed in the distance. "It never will be," Marcus replied. "Not compared to the machine we built." He glanced back at the building. "But it's something. A warm room, a bridge. A place where people aren't invisible." He hesitated. "My father worked nights his whole life," he said. Nobody ever asked him if he was okay. When he died, he had a drawer full of uncashed pay stubs he never trusted banks with. They buried him cheap. The system logged deceased somewhere. Closed the file. That's it. Elena thought of her father, stern in a tailored suit, telling her that softness was a liability. "We were raised by different men," she said. "Both wrong," Marcus said. "In different ways." They stood in silence for a long moment. "What happens when you leave?" he asked suddenly. She blinked. "What?" "You won't be CEO forever," he said. "Boards change. Markets crash. Maybe one day they get tired of you fighting for the invisible. Maybe you walk away on your own. What happens then? Does all this die because one rich woman had a moment of conscience?" His voice wasn't accusing. It was pragmatic. Elena looked at the bridge back house, at the sign, at the kids' drawings taped inside the glass. "Then we build it in a way that doesn't depend on me," she said. "Legal structures, independent funding, shared ownership. If I vanish, it limps, but it doesn't vanish." She gave him a small, tired smile. "And maybe by then," she added, This kind of thing won't look radical anymore. Maybe other companies will copy us for the wrong reasons at first. Brand, PR. But if even one of them ends up meaning it, that's one more bridge. Marcus considered that. For a long time, he said, I thought the only power I had was a key card and a pair of hands. Now I see I also have a story. And it scares me how much people listen when someone like you repeats it. Elena looked at him. For a long time I thought power meant never having to see the people under my decisions, she said. Now I know that's just cowardice with good lighting. The wind picked up, flapping the small flag near the door. You know this doesn't fix everything, Marcus said. I know, Elena replied. The system is still cold. The machine is still big. We're just cutting windows into it. And if it crushes us? He asked. She smiled then, not the practiced boardroom smile, but something smaller, realer. Then at least, she said, we'll know we didn't stay inside the glass while it did. They started walking, side by side, down a block where Hawthorne's logo didn't appear on any building. The sky was low and gray. The air was still cold. But in some small corners of the city, in a 12th floor room with second-hand desks, under an overpass where food no longer came only from trash, inside a house with a painted bridge on the wall, heat moved. The system remained what it was, efficient, ruthless, blind by design. The difference now was that inside its heart, cracks had appeared, hairline but real, through which something shockingly human was beginning to seep. One janitor who refused to look away, one CEO who finally followed him into the dark, one program that might fail, or might teach the machine to remember the people it once considered disposable. Revolutions didn't always start with banners and slogans. Sometimes they started at 2:07 a.m., with a woman putting on boots, stepping out of a glass office, and choosing for the first time not to sign someone away without seeing who they really were.